The Cursed Island of the Dolls, a terrifying legend from Xochimilco. The Cursed Island of the Dolls, a terrifying legend from Xochimilco. Imagine yourself navigating the canals of Xochimilco in Mexico City. The night is dark, and the moon's reflection on the water creates eerie shadows that seem to move on their own. The air is dense, humid, as if hiding secrets no one dares to tell. The silence is broken only by the gentle splash of water against the trashenera and the distant creaking of trees. But there is something in the atmosphere that sends chills down your spine. In the distance, you see a small, overgrown island, but something about it is not normal. As you get closer, the details become clearer and the horror begins to take shape. Hundreds of dolls hang from the trees, the rooftops, the trunks. Old, dirty, and mutilated dolls, their empty eyes staring straight at you. Some have no heads. Others are missing limbs. Their torn and blackened bodies, worn by time and humidity, seem to form a macabre army. And even though you know they are just dolls, you feel like they're watching you. You feel like they are waiting. This isn't a horror movie. This place exists, and its story is more chilling than you can imagine. This isn't just an abandoned site, it is a cursed place. The Island of the Dolls is not your typical tourist destination. Locals claim that the dolls move on their own, whisper at night, and are possessed by the spirits of those who could never rest in peace. It all began over 70 years ago when a man named Julián Santana decided to isolate himself from the world and take refuge on this island. No one knows exactly what brought him there, but the locals insist that it was because of something he saw. Something that changed him forever. According to legend, a little girl drowned in the canals near the island. Her body was carried away by the current, and though it was found, her spirit never rested. Since then, Don Julián claimed he could hear her voice in the darkness. He said he felt her presence on cold, silent nights, that something was watching him from the trees and calling his name. Terrified, he came to the only possible conclusion. The girl was trapped between this world and the next, and she had chosen him as her guardian. To calm her spirit, Don Julián did the unthinkable. He began collecting old, broken dolls from the canals and the trash to hang them on the trees, some without eyes, others with skin burned by the sun and moisture. Each doll, according to him, was an offering for the girl, but the voices did not stop. On the contrary, they grew louder. Soon the island became a grotesque altar. Dismembered dolls, twisted smiles, and tangled bodies hanging from the branches. But the most disturbing thing was not their appearance. It was what people began to experience on the island. Tourists and curious visitors claimed to have seen dolls moving their heads on their own. Others swore they heard children's laughter at night, an echo floating between the trees with no apparent source. And some, the bravest ones, decided to spend the night on the island, but none could endure until dawn. One of the most terrifying stories comes from a young man who, after making a bet, decided to stay alone on the island overnight. He had a camera and a flashlight. His plan was to prove that everything was just a myth. At first, everything was calm, but around 3 a.m, his flashlight battery started flickering. And in the dim light, he clearly saw a doll swaying, even though there was no wind. He tried to ignore it, but then he heard it. A whisper behind him. "Do you want to play with me?" He ran, abandoning his equipment. The next day, a group of tourists found his camera and returned it. When he reviewed the footage, his skin crawled. In the last image before the camera shut off, the figure of a little girl could be seen standing behind one of the dolls, but he had been alone that night. The story of the Island of the Dolls took an even more terrifying turn in 2001 when Don Julián was found lifeless, floating in the canals, in the same place where, according to him, the girl had died decades before. Coincidence? Or had the girl finally claimed her debt? Since then, the island has been abandoned, but the dolls remain, watching, waiting, whispering. Locals warn that no one should visit the island after sunset. They say that if you stay long enough, you will feel an invisible presence watching you, the air growing heavier, as if something surrounds you. Some tourists have tried to take dolls as souvenirs, and have returned terrified, claiming the dolls reappear in their homes or that they have begun hearing whispers at night. The most disturbing event happened a few years ago. A team of paranormal investigators arrived at the island to film a documentary. Everything was going well until one of them disappeared without a trace. His companions searched for him for hours. They called his name, searched the entire island, but there was no sign of him. Finally, they found him in a state of shock, sitting on the ground, completely motionless. When they managed to get him to speak, he said he had felt a small hand take his and lead him towards the water. But the worst part was what he said next. She whispered in my ear. She told me that now she was no longer alone. The Island of the Dolls is not just a tourist attraction. It is a portal between the real and the unknown, a place where the line between life and death becomes blurred. And now tell me, would you dare to visit it? Would you walk among the trees covered in dolls with the feeling that something or someone is following you? Would you stay overnight on the island to see if the legends are true? Leave me your answer in the comments. I want to know if you are brave enough to face what others have experienced on the Island of the Dolls. But be careful, if you ever decide to visit, never look into a doll's eyes for too long. Because maybe, just maybe, it will look back. If you enjoyed this story and want to discover more haunted, mysterious, and enigmatic places, subscribe to Wander Gems right now. This channel is not just about travel, it's about uncovering the secrets hidden behind the most fascinating places in the world. Places few dare to explore. Places that might change the way you see reality. Leave a like if you want more stories like this and share it with your friends. But don't watch it alone at night. You never know who else might be listening with you. See you in the next destination, if we make it back.